Hey there and welcome to Concierge Medicine Radio, your source for actionable advice and real stories of physicians running and growing concierge practices. For more interviews and notes on today's show, please visit conciergemedicineradio.com and enter your email. Now, let's join your host, Taylor Pearson.
Welcome to today's episode of Concierge Medicine Radio. We're joined today by Dr. Susan Wilder, founder and CEO of Lifescape Premier in Scottsdale, Arizona. Dr. Wilder is an expert in patient-centered and personalized functional medicine and has published several journal articles on each. A regular contributor to ABC 15's Sonoran Living program and consultant to DreamWorks, she's known for her outspoken views on healthcare. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Wilder. We're excited to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
So start off and tell us a little bit about Lifescape Premier. How is the practice structured and how does it vary from other concierge practices?
Lifescape Premier was launched, probably 5 years after we launched Lifescape Medical Associates, which was my husband and my dream practice idea of creating a patient-centered practice, which we unfortunately tried to do in a payer-centered environment and financially really struggled. So we launched Lifescape Premier, which was the concierge model midway through our last decade, and it allowed us to add first class to the airline is how I explained it to patients. And patients knew we were already delivering business class and getting paid well below coach. So we had tremendous support of our patients because we've always been patient-centered from day one. But now we were actually being valued for the services we were providing. We started with concierge choice physicians, one of the splinter groups off of MDVIP, designed our model as initially a hybrid concierge practice. I wasn't comfortable putting all our eggs in that basket, and given we started exactly 6 months before Arizona became ground zero in the recession, I'm glad we didn't have all our eggs in that one basket, which would have been devastating. So it's set up the same model as MDVIP, where it's a retainer-based practice. We just provide a tremendous amount of value to our patients, and for that reason, our growth has been amazing.
So in retrospect, you would say you're glad you went hybrid first?
For me, it was a matter of a couple of things. I always feel a tremendous duty to patients who, many of them I've taken care of for close to 2 decades, and patients who can't afford that a high-end retainer-based model. I wanted to give patients the options. Unfortunately, the insurance model isn't feasible in our style of practice to spend enough time with people, to be comprehensive, to really work hard at eliminating chronic disease and inspiring positive health. You can't do that in a 7-minute hit-and-run visit. At least we couldn't figure out a way to do that. So the hybrid allowed us kind of to put our little toe into that water to start offering a more personalized model to those who could afford it. It worked out well until you start competing against yourself.
That's one of the criticisms I've heard, that one of the problems with moving to hybrid is that you don't eliminate the overhead and the additional work in an insurance-based practice that does force you into those 7-minute visits. And so you're adding another ball into your juggle.
You know, it's a bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul. The concierge practice is very much subsidizing a higher level of service in our insurance-based practice. You know, whether that's worthwhile. I'm really so frustrated with dealing with the insurance world, as I imagine many of your listeners are. In fact, the way I put it is when I heard the president of the American Academy of Family Physicians explain to a group that, you just have to negotiate harder with the insurers, I stood up and I said, with all due respect, most of the leaders in these organizations are in academia and have the luxury of being able to serve in these political positions. And I know because I've been there and I've been in those committees. But to tell me and to tell anybody here who's practicing in the real world to go back and negotiate with the insurers is like telling an abused spouse to go back to her abuser and ask him to please be nice this time. it's not effective. They have a profit-based model that is predicated on paying you the least amount possible, and physicians accept and empower that model by signing those contracts. And until we stop signing those contracts, that behavior will continue.
Yeah, I like to think about it as a game in a sense, and that the rules of the game with insurance are so disadvantageous at this point. Trying to negotiate for slightly better rules just isn't going anywhere. You have to pick up and play a new game.
Well, yeah, I beat my head against that wall for years and years, and finally said, I can move around this, and in doing so, honor myself, and thereby even more so honor my patients. I cannot honor my patients by enabling a system that is as harmful to them and their values as it is to me and my values.
Well, walk us through then what a typical day or a typical week looks like. How do you manage the concierge portion of your practice and the traditional portion of your practice?
So, well, I have since shifted entirely to concierge mode. So I, several years ago, stopped competing against myself because I'd have patients who say, well, you know what, now that I am really back to good health and have been, transformed under your support and care, I could go back to being your regular patient because I don't need to see you that often, and, it's pretty expensive and my investments aren't doing so well, So I started to see, and it wasn't like I was going to dumb it down for my regular patients or deliver less care. It just was more rushed maybe and a little bit more clipped. But other than that, they're still getting me. So I converted entirely over.
So how long was it from when you started the hybrid, you started offering concierge at all, to when you entirely converted?
I was in the hybrid model for 3 years and then converted entirely over.
And how large is your panel, your patient panel with the concierge practice now?
We cap at about 300 full-time patients. We have a lot of part-time patients, so we kind of calculate them differently depending on kind of a utilization amount of time they're here. So 300 is our cap. There are many, out there that cap at 1,000, and then I know some that cap under 100 and have a much higher price point.
I think I've heard everything from 60 to 1,200. So there's certainly a broad range.
I've heard of practices that are over 20,000 and they're flying all over the world with patients. So yeah, there's lots. That's the beauty of concierge medicine, is that it's a free or direct medical practice. It's a truly free market. So we go from Bell Telephone, which maybe you're too young to even remember that, but where we had one, option for the delivery of telephone services, to the cell phone market we have today, and all the options and all the price points and all the variety of things that truly consumers can have some power and choose what's worthwhile to them. The problem is the payer system hasn't adjusted to allow a free market. And so therefore we have, the most expensive care in the world and the poorest outcomes. And
you said in terms of the way you structured your practice, you have 300 full-time patients and then part-time patients. So walk us through a little bit the primary services you offer and also how you do your pricing.
Our price point is, for a full-time patient, is actually just about to go up to about $4,000 per year. Patients who might be here part-time, or couples, or whole families, or corporate discounts, or things that we've kind of worked into the equations as well. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. We have a very seasonal population. I have patients who live all over the world who spend maybe some time here, and they're still in contact with me throughout the year, but many of them do have providers in Switzerland or in Japan or Australia or Canada or Minnesota or wherever they may be. So we adjust for that. We provide services balanced around the annual physical or executive type of physical, but patients can opt out of that if they don't feel that they need that service and they'd just rather have the direct access. Of course, we offer the 24/7 access, and probably that is the most important piece of the model of any direct medical practice, is access, because 80% of people's medical issues could be handled over the phone when you have a well-established patient relationship and you really know that patient. I do worry about all these models of telemedicine that don't involve a true physician-patient relationship with extensive knowledge and continuity and really knowing the background and the context and the family. We offer nutritional services, some advanced nutritional testing. We have a nutritionist as part of our care team. We have a fitness coach as part of our care team, and we have a clinical psychologist because we strongly feel that mental health and wellness should be part of whole health care delivery.
So for your full-time patients, then you have, I'm going to call it kind of concierge primary care. You do the annual physical, you have 24/7 access. They have access to fitness, nutrition, a psychologist, and then would you say that's right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then you also offer some additional services. I know like genetic testing, sports medicine, travel medicine. Tell us a little bit about that.
Again, we designed our services based on patient focus groups. What do patients need? Well, a lot of patients in this market are world travelers. So we offer an on-site travel medicine clinic with whatever vaccines and things that you may need for that particular eventuality. We offer, genetics, clinical genomics has been a passion of mine for probably, 17 years. And at Mayo, I was for a short period of time the director of clinical genomics education for primary care, trying to get the word out and help facilitate the hiring of genetics counseling at the Mayo Scottsdale before I left there as residency director. So we do offer a variety of genetic testing and things that we feel are really critical to personalized medicine. We also do a lot of advocacy. I think our job after the recession, I think my job morphed a little bit from being a facilitator of needed care to also protecting patients from unnecessary care. There's a lot of unnecessary medical interventions out there. And so we're really careful to draw the integrity line between, doing a bunch of tests that are really not clinically appropriate to doing things that are right for that patient. And sometimes that, patients want something that I'm telling them, what, I don't think it's a good idea, and they're not always happy about it. But that's okay. That's our mutual respect. I respect what my patients want, but I'm not, as I often say, I'm not a Michael Jackson doctor. I'm not here to just fulfill all your wishes just because you wish them. I'm going to have a conversation with you about why I don't think that's a good idea or why I don't think that's in your personal interest. So that can be a challenge.
I was at a conference lately and they said the third leading cause of all-cause mortality was iatrogenics, prescribing or doing something which was unnecessary, which was surprising and yet not surprising. I think there's our natural tendency. We always think the solution to a problem is additive. It's like, let's do something else. And often the solution is in fact subtractive. It's like, let's do less.
And that's a real hard balance. I train naturopathic doctors as well as allopathic physicians here. And while I'll tell the naturopaths, look, we in allopathic medicine went down a sorry path when we frankly became prostitutes of the pharmaceutical industry and decided label everyone with a diagnosis and throw a drug at every symptom. But, I said you run the same sorry path if, in naturopathy, you just throw a bunch of nutrients at every symptom. Our goal as providers, and this is paradigm shifting, should be to be transformative in our care. And that means at the end of each year, you're taking problems off a problem list. You're taking meds and supplements off that list so that people are requiring less and less support to lead healthier and healthier lives. That is the hole-in-one that keeps me playing this game. And that is what keeps us being successful in this model.
Yeah, instead of being paid for services rendered or fee for service, people are paying for outcomes. And they don't necessarily, it's not, don't give me this or give me that. I want to get this kind of lifestyle or achieve this level of health. And whatever you can do to get there is the result they're paying you for.
They're paying me for value, and value is different for different people. And there are certainly people where our value models don't work out. I have patients whose idea of value is for me to just keep them loaded with narcotic pain medications and don't want to look at any other ways of managing their pain. That's not going to work for me. That's a value model I can't support. So I will very respectfully say, you know what, I'm not able to meet your needs. I'll help facilitate your finding another provider. When you're starting a concierge practice, you have to understand it's just like when you're starting a practice from the beginning. You get a higher percentage of the doctor shopping patients, the drug seeking patients, of mentally ill potentially, and of what I call the chronically unpleasable. I think it is really critical for every provider looking to start this type of model that you have to be clear on what your values are and what your boundaries are, and be brutally honest if necessary, because to create the practice you want to create, you cannot ever violate your integrity.
So how did you handle that when you got those types of patients at your practice? Did you saw them for a consultation session and then just said, I'm sorry, this isn't the kind of service I provide?
Yeah, often it's hard to tell in that initial visit. So sometimes I'll have been taking care of them for 6 months or a year or what have you. But when it gets to the point where I feel that I'm not able to practice in their best interest, or they're asking me to do things that are out of my comfort level, I just let them know I'm unable to meet their needs. It's not going to work out.
So if you had to describe your ideal patient in the practice, what is kind of the demographic, psychographic profile of that patient?
Well, we are a high end, we're a Ritz-Carlton concierge practice. We're not a Holiday Inn concierge practice. So we do need patients who are willing to invest in quality care. Now, that investment is still, less than most people spend on restaurant meals in a year, but it's a big investment, and I appreciate that. We also love having patients who are as invested in their health as we are. If I am more invested in someone's health than they are, to me, that's a sad, sorry place to be. My mission is to inspire health. My mission is to help people transform their own health. I can't do it for them, but I can certainly guide them. But if, they're mired in can't, and or as Tony Robbins said, we often should all over ourselves. That's not the patient that I enjoy taking care of. Although sometimes it takes 10 years of that, my trying to motivate, inspire, challenge, reframe, etc. To me, that's the art part. That's kind of a challenge. And sometimes all of a sudden, when you hit that aha moment and see the transformation, oh my gosh, that's like the holy grail. But we all want patients that are invested in their health and are fun, have a sense of humor. I, had a text message once that got auto-corrected from Robitussin to robot tits. How that happened, I don't know. But fortunately, I have patients with great senses of humor, and we have great fun, kind of bantering back and forth. And even when we don't agree on things, many of us have very divergent political views, but we have fun bantering about it because we have a place of mutual respect.
Yeah, a lot of people cite Marcus Welby. I think it's kind of that level of personal rapport you're able to build with the patients because of the structure of the practice. Well,
one of my encouragements to my younger doctors who are building their practices, their concierge practices, is first of all, set your boundaries. But second, look at those patients you love. What are your favorite patients in that group that you already care for? And get them to refer their friends, the people that they admire, or their family members are often, just very similar in values to them. So you're going to that's how you build really quickly some awesome practices.
So what is the number one thing you do to attract new patients, and specifically attract the kind of patients you're looking for?
The number one thing I do is deliver amazing service to my existing patients, because my existing patients are the number one way I recruit new patients. Period. You will never recruit. People never make a decision about a medical provider from an ad or from something anonymous.
So you would say it's overwhelmingly referral based?
Overwhelmingly. People make it because, you know what, I heard your name from my friends, I heard it from my mother-in-law, my pharmacist mentioned you, the pediatrician at the hospital said to look at your practice, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number one, is deliver great service to the people that you're caring for. I had a doctor come in, consult with. I do some consulting work for providers who are looking to develop a concierge practice, and this doctor came to me and had started with one of the MDVIP or Concierge Choice, and then kind of his practice just dwindled. And he sat there. I said, so, tell me why 25% of your concierge patients quit working with you. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, before you even spend another minute with me, you need to go back and find out. Because if you don't understand why they're leaving, then you've got, you're not understanding how to serve them.
Are there any other stories of people you've seen not make the transition successfully or not be able to start a practice? And what have you learned from those people?
I saw a bit of that. I was the medical director for Concierge Choice Physicians for a year and met with a number of providers either transitioning or considering transitioning. And I will tell you that those who went into it with the mindset of what's in it for me, this is going to be an easier quality of life, I'll have more time to take vacations, my overhead will be covered, I can glide into retirement, et cetera, they were going to fail. I knew it from the get-go. They weren't about what's in it for the patient and how are they going to deliver value. It is a total paradigm shift for physicians who are used to, unfortunately, working for the payer and creating personal-centered practices instead of patient-centered practices. And when I have an oncology practice saying, oh, we don't allow patients to switch providers, I remind them, you know what? You work for the patient, not the other way around. And if you're not allowing the patient to do what they need to do to feel comfortable, then you're not going to get our referrals. We need to change our mindset as physicians to remember who we're serving. But, unfortunately, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if it's the payer you're working for, then you've got just a misguided incentive system. It's not going to work. I've also seen providers who just lack charisma or confidence. And you need a little bit of that. You need to instill some confidence, some charisma. Why are you worth that extra money? You need to make it real and deliver it constantly. And change it up and keep serving and keep understanding what is it the patients are looking for? What is it they need? Are you filling that need? If it's self-centered, don't even start.
Yeah, I think you keep coming back to this patient-centered term, and that's exactly what a lot of other people have told me, that it's the physicians that were doing what you were doing, which is they were practicing concierge medicine in a traditional model. And then they just changed the business structure. But in terms of how they served their patients, they'd pretty much been doing concierge already. They were very much high touch with their patients. And what you said reminded me of a Zig Ziglar quote I really like. You can get all you want out of life if you can help enough other people get all they want out of life. That one's always stuck with me.
That's a great one.
So we kind of talked some about the mistakes you see people make. What are the commonalities in terms of successful transitions? What are the things they do right?
It's easier to transition if you've built a lot, you have a long-standing practice of patients loyal to you. You have to have the love factor. Now, I've seen a couple of successful concierge practices that people built right from residency, which really impresses me because I think that's a challenge. You have no bank account in terms of people's respect and authority and, that kind of thing. So,
and what did those people do? Because that is impressive. And I've spoken to a couple of those people, but it's always interesting to study kind of the fringe cases.
I try to figure it out too. But I think the main thing is, they have a business sense. They are entrepreneurial spirits, and they maybe and often have some business experience. So they really understand. They really look at this from the business eye. B, they're very charismatic and laser focused in what they intend to deliver and how to deliver it. And then because they have that business mindset, they know how to build those constituencies of support and grow the practice from there. And also they're willing to take the financial setback. I've seen a lot of doctors, I'd like to do this, but I can't afford to have a slowdown in my income. Well, get over it. Seriously. I mean, if that, I went pretty much on like $25,000 for about 5 years in trying to build this model. Now I made huge mistakes, too much overhead and a lot of other issues that I spent way too much money on. So I wouldn't say that mine's the greatest model, but if you don't really believe in it enough to take some sacrifice, then don't even start. You don't have the cojones.
I think that's great advice. What were some of the biggest mistakes you made? Looking back now, what would you have done differently?
My biggest mistakes were, number one, not listening to my husband, and I hate to say that, but not listening to
that's recorded.
My JD/MBA entrepreneurial husband, who said you should start this concierge model from day one. I felt more loyal to my patients than they felt to me.
So in retrospect, you wouldn't have gone through the hybrid period. You would have gone straight to concierge.
I would not have even bothered. Yep.
Okay. And just because of the overhead, or? I
had too much trust that the insurers would pay fairly for what we do. And I didn't understand the depth of the passive-aggressive robbery model that is our insurance payment payer system. So I was very gullible, and just assumed we would get paid fairly for what we do. And that was a poor business decision. I also took on way too much overhead with a very big building and brought on several brand new physicians and supported them with the salary myself. And that wasn't a good idea.
How big was your building? How many rooms did you have, or how many?
Well, we have about, I think it's 8,000 square feet and 12 exam rooms, and it's my 401k, but it was way too much burden to carry 4 brand new practices building. That was not very smart.
Looking back now, how would you structure it when you made the transition? You would have gone strictly concierge, and what would the office setup have been like?
I love practicing in a group, and I love practicing with people who have different skill sets. We really created a complementary group we had like-minded values, but very different skill sets. And so I love group interaction. I don't think I could have done a solo practice. And I like to be able to know who's covering when I'm away, and that, that things are still, there are economies of scale to having a group that allow you to do nutritional services and skincare services and other ancillaries that I really couldn't offer in a smaller, all by myself. My advice to everyone is keep overhead as low as possible, yet at the same time, you have to be patient-centered and have it, be nice enough that you're delivering a value to the patients, that it's our office is a healing environment. It was featured on the cover of Medical Economics. It is a beautiful, beautiful practice. And in the end, the investment was worthwhile, but boy, as my dad used to say, real estate's a great investment, but it eats every day.
So specifically, what are some of the things you would have cut initially?
I probably would have started a smaller group with a smaller size, maybe leased space at first. Although, who knows? I also think the investment of real estate is a good one as long as you understand it's a long haul investment. I don't know. We had legal issues that cost us that I don't think could have been avoided. Wish they could have, but not. And I don't see any way I could have done those differently. I just wish I had never gotten into the insurance world. Also, the electronic medical records world. We're a beta test site for some big, electronic medical records, and I've found the whole electronic medical record industry a real disappointment. I told the executives of our electronic medical record at our last get-together, I pulled out my iPhone and I said, one of these days, some snot-nosed kid from Harvard is going to create an app that's going to put this entire industry out of business, and I will be cheering.
Yeah, I think there's 700 EMR companies out there right now.
Yeah, and now it's a Tower of Babel.
So there's certainly competition in the marketplace. Yeah. Are you happy with the EMR you're using right now? In small ways, but I think overall it doesn't deliver. Well, it's really the system that doesn't deliver. It's the fact that we've got hundreds of different systems that don't communicate with each other, and that we have to build interfaces one by one with every lab and every x-ray place and every place where our patient's data is. Health data should be patient-centric, not institution-centric, and we just are completely backwards in the way we've designed it, and we've set it up to support coding and billing and things that don't actually help the quality of care. So the medical record is now 12 lineal feet, of which, 1 inch of useful information is in there, but you can't find, it's like the haystack just gets bigger and bigger, and you're trying to find the needle. It's terrible. Well, you mentioned some things you would change in terms of how you structured the practice initially. Or is there anything in terms of advertising or marketing or bringing in new patients that you tried that wasn't effective? Is there anywhere you wasted money?
I have wasted money with some advertising. As I said, I would look at advertising as brand building. You do need to invest in building your brand. And so that's one investment. That includes the website. That includes the kind of maybe being out there with some advertisements in some key places. But for the most part, I think advertising is not helpful. The most helpful thing is getting yourself out there. I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of charitable involvement, but that gets me out there. My husband jokes that I pick up patients wherever we go. It could be at the kids' soccer game, could be at a party. We were on an airplane once, and I'm sitting across the aisle from my husband, but next to two women, and he goes, "I give you $5 if you pick up a patient." And within a half an hour, I had $10 from him.
Oh man, that's a great story.
It's just about and understand, you got to shovel a lot of fertilizer before you see that garden grow. So you've got to be planting seeds, being out there, doing these things that, I used to not believe in networking. I thought it was the biggest waste of time to go have lunch again with a bunch of ladies and hand out business cards. So I do it very, very strategically, but networking is the most critical thing that we do to plant seeds and to have our name constantly front of mind, and where people say, "Oh my gosh, I've heard of Lifescape. Oh my gosh, I've heard amazing things about what you do." So it's being out there yourself. And again, that requires you to get out of introvert mode. If you're a real introvert, then you need somebody to help you with that. Maybe writing articles, blogs. There are other ways to get out there, but you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to be a little bit vulnerable so that people get a sense of comfort. And who makes the medical decisions for a family? It's women. So you got to connect. Generally, it's women. So you got to connect with women.
So when you say you go out and you strategically network, what are some of the best forums or best ways you found to do that?
Well, by strategically network, I mean, I look at, okay, what are we trying to build? What group of patients are we trying to target? Are we trying to target corporate memberships? Are we trying to build more young families with teens? Because that's a great, great market. Adolescents are so fun to work with, and they're so in need of concierge medicine because they are willing to text things to a doctor that they would never say to you in person. In fact, I mean, there are times where I get these texts and I go, who is this, and what body part am I looking at, and is this legal? But I decide very, very actively what audience am I going after, and then I have
So walk us through that when you, let's just use an example. So let's say that teenage or adolescent market, when you decided you wanted to go after them, what did you do?
So I have a fabulous director of development who is the most brilliant networker I've ever seen. She probably never eats dinner at home, from what I can tell. So she's out there at everything. But then she can say, okay, this group and this group target moms of teens and young teens. We'll get a speaking engagement with this group. And we did within a very quick period of time. We had a couple of gigs and a bunch of articles in their magazine and et cetera, et cetera.
So she'll identify the right organizations or the right places to go, and then you'll offer like a free speaking engagement and to write a couple articles for their publication?
Right. And we may pay for it. We may pay to sponsor a luncheon. We may pay, these are our investments. We may pay for their charity. Again, it's investing in the community. Where is the win-win between, what we do charitably and what we're trying to gain, in terms of patients? There's ways to find that where you can do some meaningful things that feel good and that are good for the community, but they're also building your brand and growing more patients for your practice. So I encourage people to look for that win-win, but I also say to doctors, you know what? Don't do this alone. You're not good at this. This is not something that we're intuitive at. I was terrible at networking because I didn't really understand it. Now I understand. It's really getting out there to understand what are people's needs out there. Go with humility. One of the reasons the Mayo built the reputation that the Mayo brothers did is because they had incredible humility. They did not feel that they knew everything about everything. They went out in the world and they learned and they listened and they brought back teachings from all over the world. The quickest way to lose your patient population is through arrogance and through believing you know everything about everything.
Yeah, you mentioned vulnerability earlier. I'm not sure if you've seen the TED Talk on vulnerability. I can't remember the woman's name.
Love it. Brene Brown. Absolutely fantastic. One of my favorites.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes on the website if anyone wants to check that out. That is one of the better TED Talks I've seen for sure.
Yeah.
And I want to circle back real quick to something else I saw you were doing. You're doing nutritional supplements as well as part of your practice. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we came to that kind of sideways. We started practicing functional medicine, which people can look at the Institute for Functional Medicine. Functional medicine is really root cause medicine. It's trying to understand the underlying biochemistry for health and for chronic disease and how to reverse chronic disease. So we have been able to reverse the path towards diabetes, reverse hypertension, reverse obesity, reverse depression and mood disorders, for years. And that's through a lot of different, really understanding all these root causes and trying to deal with as many of those as possible. So I don't look at diabetes as a diagnosis and here's your drugs. I look at diabetes as a symptom. And why is this messed up? And then what are all the underlying causes? Well, one of them is there are 17 different nutrients necessary for insulin receptors to work properly. Well, how do we, test for those, et cetera? And then once we started doing the testing, we had a hard time finding supplements that actually changed outcomes because the supplement industry is such an unregulated nightmare of basically a lot of chaff and very hard to find the wheat. So we ended up, and our patients asking us for convenience, because we'd tell them, you need this, that, and the other thing, and they go to, Whole Foods and be just completely overwhelmed. And I'd go to Whole Foods and be completely overwhelmed and have no idea how to choose. So we vet some supplements. We sell some supplements. It's, we make it clear, you can go get this. And I'll tell patients anytime, you know what, you can go get this at Costco, because Kirkland vets their supplements very well, and they rate fairly highly in the few unbiased assessments that are out there. So, I'm very clear with people, and I'm not offering necessarily what's the best. I think there's an ethical challenge in selling something, but, there's an ethical challenge in doing an EKG or making the decision to do any of the services you provide because you get paid to do them. I think, again, it's having integrity and being honest, and it's a convenience for patients, but it's also a great revenue stream.
Well, thank you very much. If there was one thing you would say to someone either in the process of transitioning or about to make the transition into concierge or direct pay, what advice would you give them?
My main advice would be, it's about the patient. Understand clearly what your patient's values are and what they're looking for before you even take another step. Because if you don't do that, then you're just jousting with rainbows. You don't know what you're shooting for. You need to be laser focused. You need to have a goal, but that goal needs to be based on who you're trying to serve.
And you mentioned you did focus groups. Is that kind of a part of that? Did you get patients early on in your practice in and talk to them about that?
Absolutely. So we did, before we even started our practice, before we started Lifescape Medical a decade ago, we did focus groups that really were interesting, because what I thought patients valued wasn't exactly what they valued. I thought patients would value continuity, because I'm a family doctor and I value continuity, long-term relationships and, comprehensive knowledge, etc. What patients really valued was convenience, and access. They hate having telephones down between 10 and 2. And it drives me absolutely crazy to call a specialist office and our phones are down between 12 and 2, and you can't leave a message and you have to call us back when it's not convenient for you. That's the classic medical. Or, you're going to get our answering service when on call. Well, what's the point of an answering service? Why have the middleman? Are you not going to talk to the patient? Can't you route it to a call phone that goes directly to you? And just little things like that. We learned a lot from our focus groups, and also what our service mix. I watched 2 hospitals create women's health practices, and that was very eye-opening. One of them, they decided women's health was great target market. Okay. One of them just said, let's create a women's health department and we'll have women doctors in it. That was it. That was their entire model. Okay. It's actually successful because it's a well-known brand, but did nothing value-added for their patients that I could see. Other hospitals did focus groups in the community of adolescents and childbearing age women and perimenopausal women and postmenopausal aging women, and what were the services and the things that they needed, and created a really neat women's health clinic. So that was a little bit of a role model for me as we made our decision about what we were going to offer.
That's interesting. I've worked with a number of businesses, and I've always found that to be true, that often what even the business owner thinks the biggest problem or the biggest thing he provides for his or her clients or patients is in fact not at all what they would describe it as. And once you go to lunch with those people or talk to them on the phone or just bring them in and ask them, you find wildly different answers.
Right. Yeah. Never make assumptions. I mean, and that's the hardest thing, because sometimes you get some hard feedback, some feedback you didn't realize, or, but that's the most important feedback you get, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Wilder. What is the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they want to ask you some more questions or they have something to follow up on?
The best thing is to touch base with my practice administrator, which is Jody Towns. They could call our practice at 480-860-5500 and just ask for Jody Towns. I don't do a lot of free consultations, so again, one of the things I've learned as a family doctor is to honor myself and honor my time and honor my knowledge. So, if people want to bend my ear for 30 minutes to give them a free consultation, that's not going to work. Love to give it away for free, but get.
We'll put Jody's number up on the site, and if someone wants to set up a time to talk with you, they can get in touch with Jody.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wilder.
All right. Take care.
Hey guys, this is your host, Taylor Pearson. To give you a little background on the show, after seeing my dad and sister, both physicians, struggle to find a good resource for how to transition from their traditional practices, I launched Concierge Medicine Radio to create a resource to help physicians and healthcare professionals launch, run, and grow patient-centered direct pay or concierge practices. If you enjoy the show and want to help us spread the word to other physicians and healthcare professionals, it really helps us out if you'll leave a review on iTunes. I know the iTunes interface is a little clunky to say the least, so we put together a quick guide on how you can leave us a review at conciergemedicineradio.com/review, or you can go to conciergemedicineradio.com and click spread the word.
Thanks for joining us today at Concierge Medicine Radio. If you found today's show valuable, we'd love it if you spread the word by leaving us a review on iTunes or sharing it with your friends. To see notes on today's show, please visit us at conciergemedicineradio.com. While you're there, leave us your email to hear about all upcoming episodes.